It was the first night of summer break when four close friends, Ollie, Zara, Hamza, and Miriam, finally set off on the road trip they had been planning for months. University life had been exhausting, and they wanted an escape far away from the noise of the city. Their destination was a remote mountain region known for its winding roads, dense forests, and breathtaking views. What attracted them most, however, was its isolation. They chose to begin their journey at night. Ollie insisted that night drives were more thrilling, less traffic, cooler air, and pure adventure, he had said confidently. Music blasted from the speakers as the car sped down the highway. Zara recorded videos for social media, Hamza cracked jokes from the back seat, and Miriam stared quietly out the window, watching the city lights fade behind them. As they left the last gas station on the outskirts of town, the atmosphere slowly changed. Streetlights became fewer. The road stretched darker and emptier ahead. Tall trees lined both sides, their shadows twisting strangely under the pale moonlight. The sky was unusually cloudy, and the moon kept disappearing behind drifting clouds, casting shifting patterns of light and darkness across the road. "Imagine if we see something paranormal tonight," Zara joked playfully. Everyone laughed, except Miriam. She couldn't explain it, but a strange feeling had settled in her chest. It wasn't fear exactly, more like a warning. The GPS signal flickered for a brief second, then returned to normal. No one paid attention. They had no idea that this road trip would soon turn into something far darker than they had ever imagined. About an hour into the journey, the excitement inside the car slowly began to settle into a calm silence. The highway had become narrower, and the smooth road turned slightly uneven. The forest on both sides grew thicker, swallowing the last signs of civilization. Even the radio signal started to fade, replaced by static noise. Suddenly, the GPS screen flickered. "Recalculating route," the robotic voice repeated. Ollie frowned. "That's weird. The signal was fine a minute ago." Before anyone could react, the GPS redirected them to a different road, a smaller, darker one that branched off from the main highway. There were no streetlights on this path. Only a rusty, half-broken sign stood at the corner. The words were barely visible, but Hamza leaned forward and read them out loud. "Warning, road closed ahead." Everyone went quiet for a moment. "It must be old," Ollie said casually. "If it was really closed, the GPS wouldn't send us this way." Against their better judgment, they turned onto the road. The air felt colder almost instantly. A thick fog began rolling in, covering parts of the road ahead. The trees seemed taller here, their branches stretching over the road like claws. The car headlights barely cut through the growing mist. Then something strange happened. For a brief second, Zara thought she saw a figure standing between the trees, tall and completely still. "Did you guys see that?" she whispered. "See what?" Hamza asked. But when she looked again, there was nothing there. Behind them, unnoticed, the broken warning sign slowly creaked and fell flat onto the ground. The car engine died without warning. 1 second it was running smoothly, and the next it made a harsh grinding sound before going completely silent. Ollie tried turning the key again and again, but the engine refused to respond. "That's not possible," he muttered nervously. The car was perfectly fine. The fog around them had grown thicker, wrapping around the vehicle like a living thing. Their phones showed no signal. No internet. No calls. Nothing. Then, through the mist ahead, Zara noticed a faint yellow light. "Look there," she whispered. About 50 meters away stood an old roadside inn. Its wooden signboard swung slowly from side to side, creaking in the wind. The name written on it was faded and barely readable. The building looked ancient, cracked walls, broken windows, and a roof that seemed ready to collapse. Yet one thing was clear, someone was inside. With no other option, they stepped out of the car. The air felt unnaturally cold. Not like normal night air, colder. As they approached the door, it slowly opened before they could knock. An old man stood there. He was tall but thin, his pale face almost gray under the dim lantern light. His eyes were dark and unusually still, staring at them as if he had been expecting their arrival. "You need rooms," he said calmly. It wasn't a question. Ollie forced a smile. "Yes, just for the night." The old man stepped aside silently. As they entered, the door shut behind them on its own. None of them noticed that outside, the fog had The car engine died without warning. 1 second it was running smoothly, and the next it made a harsh grinding sound before going completely silent. Ollie tried turning the key again and again, but the engine refused to respond. "That's not possible," he muttered nervously. The car was perfectly fine. The fog around them had grown thicker, wrapping around the vehicle like a living thing. Their phones showed no signal. No internet. No calls. Nothing. Then, through the mist ahead, Zara noticed a faint yellow light. "Look there," she whispered. About 50 meters away stood an old roadside inn. Its wooden signboard swung slowly from side to side, creaking in the wind. The name written on it was faded and barely readable. The building looked ancient, cracked walls, broken windows, and a roof that seemed ready to collapse. Yet one thing was clear: someone was inside. With no other option, they stepped out of the car. The air felt unnaturally cold. Not like normal night air, colder. As they approached the door, it slowly opened before they could knock. An old man stood there. He was tall but thin, his pale face almost gray under the dim lantern light. His eyes were dark and unusually still, staring at them as if he had been expecting their arrival. "You need rooms," he said calmly. It wasn't a question. Ollie forced a smile. "Yes, just for the night." The old man stepped aside silently. As they entered, the door shut behind them on its own. None of them noticed that outside, the fog had completely swallowed the road. After the terrifying events of the night, none of them could sleep. The air inside the inn felt heavy, suffocating. The silence between them was no longer comfortable. It was filled with fear. "We need to leave," Zara whispered. "We can't," Ollie replied. "The car isn't working, and it's still dark outside." Trying to distract himself, Ollie began searching the old wooden drawers inside the room. Most of them were empty, filled with dust and cobwebs. But in the bottom drawer of a small bedside table, he found something unusual: a leather-bound diary, worn and cracked with age. "Guys, look at this." They gathered around as Ollie carefully opened it. The pages were yellow and fragile. The handwriting inside was shaky but readable. The diary belonged to someone named Rayhan, dated nearly 50 years ago. As Ollie read aloud, their blood ran cold. It described a terrible car accident on this very road. Four young travelers had lost control of their vehicle during a foggy night. Their car had crashed, but strangely, their bodies were never recovered. The writer claimed that after the accident, travelers began disappearing whenever they stopped at the roadside inn. Miriam's voice trembled. "For young travelers. Just like them." The final entry in the diary was unfinished. The last line read, "They are not dead. They are trapped here, and they are waiting for others to take their place." The sentence ended abruptly, as if the writer had been interrupted. Suddenly, the room temperature dropped sharply, and from somewhere deep inside the hallway came the sound of slow, dragging footsteps once again. The dragging footsteps grew louder. Thump, drag, thump, drag. The sound echoed through the narrow hallway outside their room. No one dared to move. The air felt frozen, heavy against their skin. Then suddenly, the lights went out. Complete darkness swallowed everything. Zara screamed as the door burst open with a violent crash. A powerful gust of icy wind rushed inside, even though the windows were shut tight. The diary fell from Ollie's hands. "Stay together," Ollie shouted, but panic had already taken control. In the chaos, Hamza ran toward the hallway. "We can't stay here." "Hamza, wait," Miriam cried. The corridor was darker than before, stretching endlessly in both directions. The walls seemed longer, distorted. The old wooden floor creaked beneath their feet. Then they saw it. At the far end of the hallway stood a tall shadow, unnaturally still. Its shape wasn't fully human. Its arms looked too long. Its head tilted slightly to one side. Hamza froze. The shadow moved. Not walking, gliding. In one terrifying second, it reached him. Hamza let out a blood-curdling scream that echoed through the entire inn, and then suddenly stopped. Silence. "Hamza," Zara cried, her voice breaking. Ollie tried to run toward him, but something invisible slammed him against the wall. Miriam felt icy fingers brush against her arm. Whispering voices surrounded them from every direction. "You took the wrong road. You were chosen." The hallway lights flickered back on for a brief second. Hamza was gone. Only deep scratch marks remained on the wooden floor, leading toward the darkness at the end of the corridor. Morning sunlight slowly broke through the thick forest, casting pale golden light across the deserted road. The fog from the previous night had completely disappeared. Birds were chirping peacefully, as if nothing unusual had ever happened. A passing truck driver noticed something strange by the roadside. An abandoned car. Its doors were slightly open. The windshield was cracked from the inside. The engine was cold, as if it hadn't run for days. There was no sign of struggle outside. No footprints, no blood, no evidence that anyone had been there. Police arrived shortly after. They searched the surrounding forest for hours. They called out the names of the missing 4 friends, Ali, Zara, Hamza, and Miriam, but only silence answered back. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. Strangely, there was no one anywhere nearby. No building, no signboard, nothing. Locals claimed there had never been any roadside inn on that road. Confused and unsettled, one of the officers opened the abandoned car again for a final check. On the back seat lay an old, dusty guest register book, something that hadn't been there earlier. With trembling hands, he flipped it open. Written in faded ink were 4 names: Ali, Zara, Hamza, Miriam. Below their names was a date. Not yesterday's date. Not even this year's. The date was from exactly 50 years ago. At the bottom of the page, in shaky handwriting, one final sentence appeared. New guests have taken their place. And far down the empty road, beyond human sight, the faint sound of dragging footsteps echoed once more.